All right, here we go.
Mm,
We are on Let's talk paranormal. Let's talk all the psychic abilities that we actually have as we are expanding into different frequencies. We're allowing more to come in, like animal communication, plant communication, intuition, and for myself, channeling dragons. And I'm here today with Elizabeth Russell. And she is an amazing plant communicator who has already taught me so much. And the stories that we're having and what I'm learning from her is fascinating. So I wanted to be able to share that with you. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now,
Mm,
I know that you are using plants, and one of the best stories that I heard from you that's coming in straight away to ask you is
mm,
how you have used plants in your own garden that has helped you with your asthma. But the plants are not necessarily the plants that I would use or someone else would use. So you are listening to the plants and you're
mhm.
understanding what they're saying to you. Oh, pick me, pick me. So can you talk us around that a little bit?
Yeah, so I am an herbalist, and I do have formal training as well as training from my mom, my gran, and my nana. And so a lot of this was probably forgotten as I grew up because I moved away from it. But in my own home, as I would notice all these what people consider weeds growing, and I could just feel myself being drawn to them. So you can feel that energy just pulling you in even before I could actually hear them say, "Hey, pay attention." And then I started hearing that. But so I use things like creeping Charlie and purple dead nettles, and I will use those to help with allergies and asthma. And I make something called a weed pesto. So I basically take all the wild weed kind of things out in my yard that are edible and medicinal, and I'll actually make a pesto from it. So you can use them as food, you can use them as tinctures, you can use them as teas, you can make them into salves or balms, and even that can be a beneficial for your asthma or allergies. And flower essences, that's one of my absolute favorite things to do is to work with the flowers to create flower essences. If you guys are familiar with box remedies, this is what I'm talking about, is creating these. And um, I found that over the years that I have lived in this on this land, new plants arrive. And I've learned that when something new appears, I need to listen to it. I need to sit with it and actually talk to it and feel its
Do you
energy.
mean it's new to
And
you or it's come back on the planet?
new to me because they do grow in other places and they might be a
Okay.
plant that I'm familiar with, but I've not actively worked with because there are some things that don't normally grow around here.
Okay.
To give you an example, I'd been here about 10 years, and then all of a sudden, motherwort started popping up in my yard. Now, I live in an area where all my neighbors have beautifully manicured yards, and mine looks like the fairy kingdom. It's very wild. But my plants like to be a little on the wild side. So, and then motherwort started growing, and I was like, okay, I know this is good for the heart, good for the cardiac system. Um, and then as I sat with it, I just felt very calm. It had a very calming energy. It just kind of drew me in, and it's like a mother's hug, very welcoming, very warming, and I could just feel this bond growing with this plant. So then the nerdy side of me, the geeky side, had to go in and do a lot of research on it. Oh, it's great for anxiety. It's great for restlessness, for relaxation. I was like, oh, now I know why you're showing up because I was going through a really chaotic spot in my life with job changes and everything. It's like, okay, Mother Ward is showing up to say, hey, I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. Let's work together. And so now it grows everywhere in my yard. So I don't know if that's a sign of I need to get my anxiety under control or actually what she's doing is she's producing an abundance, an overabundance for me so that I can share her out with other people. So I have plants that are actually going to go to some friends because they've actually requested, hey, do you have any extra motherwort plants? Absolutely. And as I was harvesting the other day, my first harvest of the year, because I harvest it like 3 or 4 times, I had plants saying, don't pick me. You're going to dig me up and pop me, and I'm going to so and so. And they told me who they were going to. So I was like, that's a new one for me. But they were very specific about I am going to this person, this one, I'm going to that person. It's like, okay, perfect. We know where your home is going to be, and that's who they want to connect with. So
Awesome. Now, coming
yeah.
up through the detox world, I remember
Mhm,
hearing, and I've seen this in my own garden,
mhm.
that if you have an abundance of dandelions, for example, but you don't
Oh yes.
necessarily see them in your neighbour's garden. I mean, most people
Mhm.
might want to put salt in them or get rid of them. I'm just like, oh no, hang
Oh
on a
no,
second.
no, no, no,
So
no, no, they're
I came
amazing.
up through that detox world and then understanding more
Uh-huh.
about foraging, and I got opened up to so many different aspects of it.
Yes.
But then
Hmm.
the dandelions being in your yard are making
Hmm.
a sign for you, this would be good for you. And they're good for,
Hmm.
getting rid of extra liquid and all those kind of things. And, of course, the
Hmm.
leaves can be put in salads. You can use it for this, 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 and this. But,
Oh
you don't want
yes.
to farm them. You don't want to just like, okay, this spot here is, for dandelion. It's just
Uh,
like they are where they are. So I always
well,
think
they're
that's
actually, yeah, exactly. They're also good for the soil too, so they can help rebuild the soil. But the roots, the leaves, and the flowers all have different uses. So the entire plant, like you can use the roots as a coffee substitute, no caffeine, but that's really good for liver health. You can use the leaves, as you said, in salad. It also goes good in a pesto, soup, stews, whatever. That is more for the kidneys. The flower is the part that contains the strongest medicinal benefits. What I have found that is best for, although it has an overall beneficial health, is that is good for pain. So I make an infused oil from the flowers, and that is what I use for my skincare. That with blended with castor oil, but I also use it to make salves and lotions, which I have found personally go really well if I've burned myself, whether it's a sunburn or burn when I'm cooking or something. And I find I don't do well with aloe vera on burns, but with this oil, it helps take the pain away and it helps heal it very well. Like I don't know, you can't even probably see it. I have a scar on my
yes,
arm.
yes.
Okay, so it's kind of a circle scar. That was a steam burn. And it was so bad that the skin actually, my upper layers of skin separated from the lower layers of the skin and everything. But as it was healing, this is the oil I kept putting on it. Once it cooled down, because you don't want to put oil on something that's still hot. Once it's cooled down and everything, and that's how I kept it moist. That's how I kept it, healing with a bandage over it with this oil, and it healed within a week.
What I find interesting
Hmm.
is when I'm talking to an animal communicator or yourself as a plant communicator, it's
Hmm.
not that we're using things that we've learned. It's
Hmm.
like if I'm doing a reading for someone and a friend of mine asked, "Oh,
Hmm.
can you do a reading for me on snails?" They just like keep on turning up. So I won't
Sales.
go and research what someone else said about snails. I'll read
Hmm.
into what that signal is for them. So
Yes.
what I'm really interested in with
Hmm.
you and is you're not listening to what or taking what's been educated and what's gone before, but you're taking it from
Hmm.
what really is now. Now, I was fascinated with Dr. Bach and the Bach flower remedies. I lived in the
Hmm.
village right next to him, and I remember going there just going,
Oh, wow.
on earth.
Yep.
That was really at my point. I was meditating, I'd done Reiki, and so this was my next
Hmm.
level of kind of like not understanding or fathoming
Hmm.
how did he know that that was for that emotion? How did so this is where the
Hmm.
whole allowing the information to come through to you that
Hmm.
no one else has ever heard of or been taught. And this
Yeah.
is what we're talking about when paranormal or guidance is coming through to you. It's
Hmm.
spot on and get to trust that rather than reading in a book
Hmm.
and saying, oh, yes, 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 because it might not be relevant to you.
Right. So, yeah, it's just, plant communication is something I've always done. It's from my earliest childhood memories, I remember talking to animals, talking to plants, and trees in particular. I have always felt it's not really a joke when I say it, but trees are my people. I feel most comfortable amongst trees. They sing. Like if you walk through a forest and you actually pause to listen, you can hear the music. And it's not music like you'd experience in, a concert hall or any kind of, music venue. This is just, it's energetic, but at the same time, it's almost auditory. And when I was a child, so our property backed on a big forest. And, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. You roam the forest. What are you going to do all day? Because we didn't have cell phones. We didn't
Come
have
back for
computers. We
dinner.
didn't have any of that stuff. Yeah, come back. Be back in time for dinner or be back before dark.
Yeah.
And of course, as kids, we'd often forget to take food with us. So we'd always have a canteen. We always managed to take water, but sometimes we'd run out of it. And what I would always do is I would pause and I would listen and I'd say, okay, I'm hungry. And then all of a sudden I'd see berries. Like, okay, there are the berries I could eat. Or look at this plant. Oh, this look has really yummy looking leaves. And I would, it's okay. There's wintergreen, or there's chickweed, or there's something else, poplar, willow. There's a couple others that you can even pine needles, you can eat. So we never went hungry. And then because we would venture quite far, we would sometimes get turned around and my friends and I would be like, oh no, how do we get home? And be like, okay, just hold on. You pause, you listen, you put my hand on the nearest tree, and then I would just listen and be, okay, we're going that way. And inevitably there would be a deer trail or some easy pass through the forest that we'd be able to get home, and we never got lost. So, and I've done this, I did this out in the Pacific Northwest. When I was hiking out there one time with family, I kind of got a little off trail. Didn't mean to, but I was like following a sound or an energy or something. And I was like, oh no, where did everybody go? And forest I don't even know. Like, okay, help me out, guys. And, out there, the moss really speaks to you as well. And they showed me how to get back to the trail, and I found my way back, and no harm, no foul, but the trees will guide you.
I'm loving
And
what you're saying there
yeah,
because it's such an it's something that we maybe put out there. I mean, people might be associated with animal communication or horse whispering or
hmm
something, but here you are in the middle of nowhere getting messages back from
hmm
trees. And I remember when I was going through the
hmm
same phase of, well, why not,
hmm
and the dragons have since told me that the trees are our closest relatives as humans because they are a conduit.
hmm they are.
So I remember
Yes.
walking years and years and years ago with my old dog, Weimaraner, and he caught the scent of a deer and
hmm
off, off he was into the
He
middle of the
goes.
forest. And of course, my whole family's going, "Oh
Yep.
my God, Lila." I'm like, he's not going to respond. He's
Yep.
like death at this moment. So
hmm
I took myself off, and I was like, they're not going to understand this. Took myself off until they were kind of out of earshot, and I found
hmm
myself a tree, and I held onto the branch, and I said, um, I've lost my dog, or he's gone running. So you'll know where he is because he's
hmm
within you. He's within the forest.
hmm
I'm sending out a message to him via you to say, this is where I am, and I'm sending out as much love as I possibly can. He's not going to get told off. He's having a whale of a time, but just bring him back safely.
hmm
Talk to his soul as he's running around, and like when he's finished, I'd love to see him walking down this road towards me. And there was paths all over the place, but just want him to see me
hmm
coming towards me. But I'll keep my eyes closed and I'll just keep sending out like, come back, seeing him at my foot, seeing him with
Aw.
me, and let me
hmm
know when he's coming. Just like give me a little bit of a nudge. And I don't know how long I stood there for. It wasn't ages and ages and ages, but at some point I just
hmm
got, oh, I can open my eyes. And there he was going, I
Yeah.
went, no,
Happy as a clam.
I was such a
Look what
great
I did.
joy. And he was coming back, and I was like,
I love
really
it.
marvelous. But that also goes to the point of saying when you think something's lost, they will remain lost. So like if I thought,
Yes.
oh my God, that's it, he's gone, I'm never going to find him again. Why would you think that? Because you're going to get that
hmm
back. So I was saying to the trees, no, this is where I am. Please send him back to me. Mummy loves him more than anything else in the whole wide world. And
hmm
he won't get punished. He will just get love,
Yeah.
love, 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 love.
Aw. See, that's wonderful. And yeah, because the trees can help you find your way. They can help your loved ones find their way home. It's amazing and the trees can be very protective too. So one of the things that I have noticed, and I should go take a picture of this at some point because it still boggles my mind. So the properties on either side of mine are pretty open and very sunny, and mine tends to be very shady because all of the trees have kind of grown over. So they're starting to they arch into my yard. And the ones on the one side, they're actually all the trees are on the neighboring property. They're not on my property.
We want to be over
And
there.
yet they arch into my yard. And I was like, okay. And for the longest time, I was like, why are you guys doing this to me? And then all of a sudden I realized I feel like I'm in this beautiful, safe little cocoon. It's my own world. My yard is a bit of a wild fairy garden mess. Actually, it's not a mess. I shouldn't use that word because it's to me, it's very welcoming to the wild folk. Okay. And I do have a long
And when you're
history
talking
with,
about wild folk, you're not just talking about hedgehogs, you're talking about
oh, I'm talking about the Fae. I'm talking
exactly
about, yeah, I have
Fey
gnomes in
world, the
my
leprechauns,
garden.
and all
I
the
have
rest of it.
fairies.
Yes.
I have, yeah, I do. And I have them actually all around my house, in my front yard too, pixies and everything. And I'm in awe of them that you don't mess with them. You're nice to them. But even when I prune things, I ask permission before I prune. I ask permission before I dig things up. I ask permission before I cut things down. Because plants have feelings too. And especially when I'm doing like my flower essences, I will always, as I'm harvesting, like I have a little white mulberry tree that's in a big planter, and it bloomed for the first time this year. I've had it for years, and it bloomed, and it kept going, hey, hey, pay attention, and I thinking because I was doing some stuff. I thought it just wanted to be pruned back because there's some dead twigs on it and that I need to prune it back. And then it says, no, please take a closer look. And I look, and there's blossoms all over it. And I've never seen a mulberry tree blossom before, so I'm looking at it going, oh, oh, oh my word, you're flowering. And they're like, yeah, make an essence. I was like, okay. It had not been on my radar at all. I mean, there's lilacs and there's not rhododendron. Oh my gosh,
Azalea,
beautiful magnolia.
magnolia.
Because I've done azalea, but so my neighbors think I'm crazy because when a flower calls to me, I'll go over and say, hey, can I take a couple of those flowers? I want to make a flower essence. And they're like,
So
yeah, go ahead.
tell that story of the
Go.
one that you
But,
told the other week about when
oh,
you,
my crocus.
yeah.
Yeah, the crocus. So I have a neighbor with a beautiful plot of this gorgeous early dark purple crocus. And I've been shopping. I was coming to my front door and I'm hearing this, hey, come play with us. Hey, and literally, I thought I was hearing voices outside my head. And I'm looking around going, okay, first of all, there's no little girls in my neighborhood because they sounded like little girls. And I'm like going, okay, I don't see anyone. And then as I'm turning back to my door, I hear it again. And all of a sudden I see the purple crocus. And they're like, kind of, oh, you guys, you want me to come play? And so I feel bad. My neighbor wasn't home. So sorry, Nancy. I went over and so it's a huge patch of them, and I'm like, okay, who wants to come play? And so they will tell you if they want you to use them, or if they want to be left alone, or if they just want to, we'll just set it energy from here. Some of them are just, and some of them are like, nope, I'm not, thank you, but I'm not going to be part of this. So it's all part of what they want to do energetically. And so the ones who were willing to come play and become a flower essence, I snipped and put into the crystal bowl with the water and made my first crocus flower essence. So, which was a lot of fun. And it was a day where I'm going, well, it's supposed to rain later. And they're like, nope, nope, today's the day. You need to do it today. Okay, we're doing it today. And as soon as, because it takes 3 to 4 hours, I usually give it closer to 4 because we have a lot of clouds that go overhead. And as soon as I had brought it inside to do the rest of the processing, the clouds came in and it started to rain. So it's all the timing. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, there.
I love that story, but I
Mm-hmm,
love when I first met you and you asked for a reading, you came into one of my groups.
mm-hmm,
I do a business reading whenever somebody comes in to work with me, or just I do a
mm-hmm,
business reading, and it just basically says the vision that Source has for you, and then I can see it and I can feed that back to you. So basically, this is you in your fullest essence.
mm-hmm,
So I was reading into Lisbeth and I was reading into the spirit of her business, and I was just like, wow, what what is going on here? I'm watching like Avatar the movie, and these plants are just becoming fluorescent, and they're putting their hands up and they're going,
Yep.
me. And then someone
Mhm.
else over here was saying, me. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Mhm.
And this is amazing. So I was in this whole garden with these plants communicating back to you. And I didn't really know you, didn't know what you did.
Mhm. Yep.
And then when we spoke, you said, well, yeah, that's actually what I experienced. And I said, but they were so colorful and vibrant and vocal. And you went,
They are.
yes. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, I feel so
Yeah.
blessed to have had that experience of this is,
They,
this is what plant communication can be like.
yeah, so a lot of it is they communicate in color, they communicate in energy, music. They will. There's music to them. If you've ever heard of the one that's easiest to explain is the singing trees of Damanhur. It's I don't remember where it
Is
is.
it this little
It's
apparatus that you clip on the leaves?
well, no, but that I think has come from what they
All
did
right, because I
there.
was
I
going to
think that
ask
was
you if
developed
that's
because of
similar,
that.
the similar tones that you get when you listen to a tree. Is it similar, or because I find
No,
it's all
because
a little bit
honestly, yeah.
digital.
So that is a bit digital, but at the same time, what I hear is almost like some people might equate it like with choirs of angels.
Yeah.
It's that kind of music. Sometimes it's a low hum, sometimes it's harmonies. I will hear harmonies, and not generally any words. So it's a lot of just vocalization, but that's what I will feel that I am hearing. That's what I will actually feel. So if you've ever been to um, a concert of some kind where you can actually feel the vibrations of the music that they are doing,
Mm.
that vibrational level is what I
I would
feel
say
when the
when you
plants are
sit really
communicating.
close to an orchestra that's playing and you get
Yes.
the frequency and the vibration going through you, just like, oh,
Yep.
what?
Yep. So it's kind of like listening to and it's the frequency is more like listening to female singers vocalizing rather than the deep male singers, although there are some trees and mosses that will give out the deeper tones.
Okay. So it's not like a
But it
male
also
choir or a cappella.
it's
It's more the
yeah, it is.
tones.
It's more yeah, like a cappella. So definitely that. But it's also like I can get kind of the same vibrational feeling by listening to cello music.
Mm.
So like in the winter when everything goes quiet, I find myself listening to cello music a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah,
You miss the
or
plants.
I miss the plant. Well, and then my indoor plants seem to really like that music.
Okay. So
So
you said something in
yeah.
a conversation within our group that we had the other day, and you were talking about a tree for someone else, and you said, but this tree was a really
Mhm.
friendly, loving tree. And I thought, oh, isn't that funny? Because we would think, well, all trees would feel the same. And I was like, no, well, why should they?
No,
So I was
no,
walking the
no.
other
They're all
day as
very
I do
different.
past all these oak trees, and I thought, well, I'll
Hmm.
just to this tree and feel oh my goodness, you feel really neutral compared to you. And I was like, oh wow,
Hmm.
it is like getting, the different notes on a piano. You
It
see
is.
or you feel and you feel the resonance. Like,
Hmm.
I'm just thanking you very much for sort of opening up that whole spectrum of communication when I'm going just taking the dog for a walk. And because
Hmm.
I talk about the soul and the communication with the soul and how you dip into the
Hmm.
soul and how it then messages you the language through your body. So aches and pains and symptoms. And then we talk about the
Hmm.
symptoms in your business when clients, don't come and money is scarce. Like these are all
Hmm.
signals to us. So an
Hmm.
animal communicator would be able to get the signals from the animal, horse or dog or cat or wild thing, and then you're able to get them from plants. And it's just for me, it's just
Hmm.
like, oh my God, there's just so much that we can talk. I mean, I talk to my car,
Hmm.
if her battery's
I do
flat
too.
or her
Yep.
tires are flat or something. I'm like, oh, she's cranky, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
And it's always for me a reflection back. It's like a message back to me. So there's always this
Hmm.
communication that's going on. And when I'm talking to a client about your soul, I'm saying, but it's a constant communication with your soul, darling. It's like, what would you love
Hmm.
to eat? So this is just taking this on another level. And if you're a lover of
Hmm.
plants, then
Hmm.
it's taking that relationship just that little bit further, not going into the
Hmm.
shamanic world, but yes, it is. It's kind of like, well, this is just a normal communication with another
Hmm.
living being.
Right. Yeah. So my Nana, my great grandmother was indigenous. So she was Native American. And so a lot of this stuff I know that I learned at her side when I remember being like 4 and 5 years old and visiting her up on the St. Lawrence River at her little cottage. And she'd like, let's go out and play with the flowers. Okay, I'm into that. And she would be weeding the flower bed and she would be talking to the flowers. And I remember always seeing lots of little sparkles around the flowers. But she would actually have conversations with them, and I wouldn't necessarily hear the replies, but I could feel the symbiotic relationship that was going on there with her and her plants. And my grandmother was the same. My grand and but what she did with these conversations afterwards just boggled my mind. She would because they lived on the St. Lawrence River. She had originally lived on one of the islands there, Grindstone Island, and so there's a lot of family that does the fishing or they do the boating or they're all it's very good farm stock people up there and my family. And so she would talk to them and she would ask them about any incoming storms, when the weather was going to shift for the winter or the spring, when if there how bad the winter was going to be, what did they need to do to prepare. And then she would actually give this information out to the people who were going to be out on the water or the people who were farming or family. She would actually so she was indigenous, but she was also very Scottish. So she was a Carnegie. And yeah, so there's a lot of that going with that too. So but she never used the word shaman because in our indigenous traditions, they're not shaman. They're the storytellers, they're the wisdom keepers, they're so I don't ever use that word, but yeah, for what people perceive as shamanic workings these days, kind of this is
So
in
here's what
that
I'm being told to
somewhat realm.
say by the dragons right now.
Uh-huh.
This is just our
Uh-huh.
normal way of operating. So as we move into the
Yeah.
wider spectrums, we are remembering all of this stuff that we've
Yes.
just put on the side burner, we've put to
Yep.
the back in favor
Mm-hmm.
of using our mind and our educated ways. So whether it's
Mm-hmm.
shamanism or it's tribal, Aboriginally,
Mm-hmm.
Maori, like
Mm-hmm.
or pagan, people who are on
Mm-hmm.
the earth because we've become a little bit disconnected from the earth and what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is already there. And as a child, I used to just be just fascinated by and just
Mm-hmm.
lose myself for hours just watching the rain run down the roof, or singing. And then I said, remember, singing and thinking, I said, oh, look, the grass is dancing with me. And you were like, yeah, don't be mad.
Mm-hmm.
you know. But of course, as I've got older, I've suddenly realized because I'm
Mm-hmm.
becoming more and more and more intuitive, and of course, connecting in
Mm-hmm.
with the dragons, reading into businesses, I'm just like, there's nothing that you can't see. There's nothing that you
Right.
can't feel.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a big you remember when I came back from doing the Santiago de Compostela, I was telling everyone in the group about
Yes.
we
Mm-hmm.
connected with these great big metal structures that had been designed. And one of them
Mm-hmm.
I had to get out of there. And I was like, whoa, it's really bringing something up for me. So I handled that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went back into another one and then I decided to sort of like just connect in with it. And I was like, whoa, the energy at first it was kind of I thought it was sinister. And then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, the energy in this is massive. And of course, the
Mm-hmm.
people are walking around completely
Yeah.
oblivious. And this was just showing me in another scope of where we're going as this golden age, as we're going with being more
Mm-hmm.
intuitive, as we're at the leading edge of you
Mm-hmm.
have just got no idea how powerful
Oh.
you are, how
Mm-hmm.
in depth you can go. Like you are just
Mm-hmm.
skimming the surface. And I talk about practical magic because I've
Right.
seen I've seen miracles happen with my own body when I've spoken to
Mm-hmm.
my own body. So, and my kids are more intuitive than I
Mm-hmm.
was, and I'm just keeping on trying to keep that
Mine
going
too. Mm-hmm.
because they're
Yep.
so much more in touch than we were because they were born to
Mm-hmm.
us, obviously, and because you had the luck of having those kind of conversations with your grandmother. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
blessing. Absolutely a
Yeah.
blessing.
Yeah. Well, and it's like so when I started taking Reiki, or so when I first started learning Reiki a little over 10 years ago, um I decided because my Reiki teacher had said, you can do this, with your car, you can do this with plants, you can do this. And I'm going, oh, okay. And it was spring, and there's this gigundo black locust tree. Um, and if everyone wonders if trees have sense of humor, get to know black locust trees. These trees are just, they have the wackiest sense of humor of any tree I've come
Quirky.
across. Oh, they are very quirky. But anyway, so this tree is actually in my neighbor's yard, right on the property line, and he is older than my house. My house is almost 50 years old, or almost 80 years old. Sorry, well, yeah, it was built in 1948. But so this tree, because black locust trees will blossom, and when they bloom, they have flowers that look almost like wisteria flowers, but they're generally white. And although I think there's blue and pink too, but generally they're white, and they smell almost like jasmine. They are just lovely. So grandfather tree was not there. There were no leaves. There were no signs of life or anything. And for all of that, he likes to send me little trees all up through my yard. um, I there was nothing, and I was like, oh no, don't tell me he hasn't. Oh no, please tell me he hasn't died. And so I'm sitting on the split rail fence on my property line, and I've got my arms around this tree, and I'm going, okay, well, let's see about this Reiki stuff, and I'm giving him Reiki, and I to the point where my neighbor came out to see what I was doing. He's like, it's okay, I'm just giving the tree Reiki, and he goes, okay, turned around and went back into his house. This is a previous neighbor from many neighbors ago. But anyway, so I just sat there with my arms around the tree, my cheek against the bark, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just sending all the Reiki into him. And then all of a sudden, there was this, I mean, I could feel it's like a whoosh, and this green energy just shot up from deep in the earth all the way up through to the tips of his branches, and it left the tips of his branches like fireworks. And in this energy, I saw his face. And thus began the conversation, because he started talking to me, and I could see, and just, if you've ever seen those images of like the Green Man, with all the leaves and vines around, this was similar to that, only it's not like leaves and vines around this beautiful smiling face. It was branches and leaves and twigs, and the skin was barky looking and everything, but it was just this amazing soul who is much older than the tree itself. And one of the messages he gave me is that he and I have worked together in other lifetimes. And it's just that we've just come back together in this lifetime, and he had lessons to remind me of. So I actually have a blog that I wrote about lessons learned from Grandfather Tree, and talking about some of the things that he has reminded me of, that he's taught me. And at one point, I was going to sell my house and move. And I was like, but what am I going to do? I won't be near you anymore. And he's like, oh, don't worry, honey. No matter where you go,
That will
I will
pop up.
find you, and I will send you one of my grandchildren. It's like, oh boy. So meanwhile, I now have two other black locusts, one on the other side of my yard and one at the back of my yard. And they finally were like, this spring, they're like, you know why we're here, right? And I was like, to tease me, to drive me crazy because you guys won't stop growing. Because they have thorns. Their thorns can get huge, and yeah, they're like, no, honey, we're here for protection. It's like, oh, they're protective trees. Well, they are. They're very protective trees, and they are very um, community minded. They are very family oriented, and their family isn't just the black locust. Their family are the other plants that are around them. Their family are the humans that they live around. So I have family that live a couple hours away. And if I, want to do a quick tap in to see how they're doing, I can tap into the grandfather tree and say, hey, would you have your family check in on my family and, kind of report back to me? And it's kind of a way of not spying on them, but it just, get the energetic feel or whatever. But they've told me a couple of times, hey, you need to call home. It's like, oh, call home. And yeah, I did need to call home. Because there was something going on. And so it's you can communicate. So it's like their own network. It's like we have the internet. That's what we're using right now, is we're using the internet, but trees have their own form of that.
But
Whether
it's
it's their
interesting,
talking.
it goes beyond the forest they're in. It goes across
Oh yeah.
seas, it
Goes
goes across
worldwide.
countries, it grows. So it's not
Yeah.
just the root systems, because I understand it, there's like a wave of energy on the particular frequency that belongs to that particular family of trees, for example. So it's what you're
Mhm.
saying.
Yeah. So they communicate very closely with their own type of tree, but they will communicate with other trees as well. And science is actually catching up to this, which I find so super cool. But at the same time, you can, mosses will do it too. Moss seems very mild-mannered. Moss and lichen as well. I'll toss lichen in with this. They seem very mild-mannered, but they are very deeply rooted, for lack of another word, in grounding energy and support. And they are, if you want something remembered, tell it to the moss. If you want something if you want information sent out, tell it to the moss. Because the trees will do it too, but the moss is part of their conduit system. And there's just something, it's a different level. So the trees, I don't know if it's necessarily a different vibrational level. That kind of is what it feels like. It's different layers of vibrations. Um, so when they all work together, it can overpower people because it's just so much of a just yeah. I don't even know how to explain what I'm seeing. It's kind of just like looking a multi-layered thing.
When I'm seeing the
Um,
moss, it's like because there's so
it's
much of it, because it's not just one
yeah,
plant, but it's kind of like
right.
it spreads all over the place. It's just it has
Hmm.
got a different way of kind of broadcasting, whereas a
Yeah,
tree has its tune channel, and
yeah,
the moss seems to sort of have its own broadcast bandwidth, if you want to call it like that.
it does. And I just find that so I don't know. I mean, so being over in where you are, I don't know. It's probably more Eastern Europe. The legends of the Moss people. I had heard about that when I was a kid, but I recently come across those tales again, the Moss people. It's kind of erased history. People don't even really talk about the legends of them and anything anymore. But honestly, there is truth behind that legend. They it's there's a sentience there that's different than human sentience, but there is sentience there.
Mm.
They know, they remember, they see, they experience, they communicate, they live, they love, they have all the emotions. It just doesn't translate the way the humans normally experience it. So if you're open to experiencing it in different ways,
Which
you
makes me
will.
want to
Mhm.
take this conversation to something that we were talking about yesterday and what we
Okay.
both talked about just before we came on the call.
Mm-hmm.
We, by chance, there's no such thing as coincidence. This thing popped
Right.
into our world where somebody was talking to a tree and inviting it to come closer and closer and closer and closer and closer and closer, until it touched,
Yes.
and then it just kind of stayed there. And you went, but all the
Mhm.
other branches are blowing around in the breeze, and this branch is just on this person. So you went, I'm going to
Mhm.
go and try that, and then you
Yeah,
filmed
because I've never
yourself
done it before. Yeah.
beautifully. Of course, the whole point of doing these conversations is because you just don't know that this doesn't exist. You've forgotten that this is even a thing. So
Mhm.
anyway, you did this beautiful video, and I'm watching you in this video, and you were like, just like, oh, come closer. And the love that was exuding from you was just so powerful. So what I'm open to say here is when you're in
Mhm.
communication with a plant, of course it's respectful, but
Mhm.
there is just another level of love that I think is profound, that is just completely missing in our education of love. And if you know me, you know that I've been on a quest for
Mhm.
what love really is my whole this existence. I know I'm from Lemuria, I know I've had
Mhm.
other lifetimes as a whatever, but that's my whole legacy, is to kind of like experience it and then share it with other people. How that
Mhm.
zooms up your manifesting, how it attracts la da 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 da. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about the
Mhm.
relationship that you have with another species, whether
Mhm.
that's and we are going to be talking about this at some point, the Fae, the aliens that are coming in,
Hmm.
whether it's animals, whether it's plants, and,
Hmm.
it's not indiscriminate that we just go and sort of chop their heads off and kind of, oh, we're going to munch you, we're going to eat you now. So I want you to talk about that. And then also I want you to
Yeah.
tell the story of having the conversation, a very loving conversation with a beautiful bush that you have in your garden. And you're like, I'm so, so sorry that I'm going to have to hack you back so much, and go
Right.
forward with that story that
Yes.
you have there, because that is such a gorgeous story.
Yeah. Let me do that one first because that's a quick one. So that's Japanese knotweed. So anybody in the US, you're familiar with Japanese knotweed and how invasive it can be. And I have neighbors who complain about how much they've got on their property. Well, at the back of my corner of my property, there's a small patch of Japanese knotweed. It goes from my property to the one next door. And in the 19 years I have lived in this house, that patch has never gotten any bigger. One of the things I did when I first bought my house and I was going around and identifying what's in my yard and everything. I saw it and I was like, ooh. And at that point, I thought it was a type of bamboo, but Japanese knotweed is actually in the buckwheat family. But anyways, I just knew that it grew and it could be invasive and everything. And I remember looking at it going, I love your flowers. I love your leaves. I love you. Please don't make me have to cut you back because, just stay in your little patch and I will just love you and talk to you and just, we'll have a beautiful relationship. And even the landlord from next door was like, I don't know why I never have to cut that back. I was like, I do. And it has never grown any bigger. And and there are years where it's not as lush as it sometimes is. And then there are years when it's very lush, but it grows lush within its little plot and it never extends outward from there.
Mhm.
So and one of the reasons I have an affinity for Japanese knotweed is the pollen from the flowers, when made into honey by our wonderful honeybees, is very good for the lungs.
Mm.
It's very good for like asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia. So it's one of those you buy it local, it's very supportive honey. And because of my asthma and other lung issues, I love knotweed honey. So yeah, there was that. Um, but so the tree branch thing. So when you showed me that video yesterday, I was like, I've never seen this before. I'm gonna have to go out and try it. I immediately went outside, and it was pretty breezy here yesterday. And so this is my native honeysuckle that I planted when I bought my house. So she's 19 years old, and I call her Henrietta. And I had to cut her back drastically last year because she was up against my house. I planted her too close to the house. But so she's got this one branch that kind of hangs over that that she just kind of waves at me once in a while. So I went and I stood under that branch and the wind is blowing it away from me. And I just started talking to her. And pretty soon she brings the branch down and she's got it against my arm. And you can see, if you look at the leaves above and behind me, you can see how it's still blowing away. But she's like velcroed to my arm, and I'm sitting there and talking to her, and um, she did get angry for me hacking away so much as I did last year, and I felt really bad because I miscut and I cut too much. But this spring, she's got so much new growth, and like I was explaining with the black locust grandfather tree, when he showed me his face, Henrietta showed me hers this year. So we had a beautiful conversation in the spring, and I'm blown away by yesterday by her doing that, with even the breeze blowing it away. I mean, I was crying because
Yeah, I can
she's
see
just
that. Your
glued to
tears of
me
joy, and
and just
you were
like,
just, and we were saying earlier on,
oh
so
my God.
the feeling, what I got, because I played with that also
Mhm,
today, and the feeling that I
mhm.
got was not so much, the action that it came towards me, but I was just like, the feeling that I had in my body
Yeah.
was
It's unconditional
total
love.
in awe
Hmm.
and wonder, and
Hmm.
yeah, just total, okay, here we go,
Yeah.
reverence for this
Yes.
being.
Yep. Because they are. And so yeah, it's the just the waves of unconditional love that when you connect with a plant, whether it's a tree, a flower, whatever it is, when you really truly connect with that plant being, that plant person, there is so much unconditional love involved there that it just fills you and just makes my heart want to burst, you know. Yeah.
I think we've got
That's
so
just
many things around
yeah.
us that, so
Mhm.
the dragons often say to me, like the purpose of us being here as a soul is to have amazing experiences, but we got stuck in
Mhm.
survival and we have to sort of get ourselves out of that. And then everybody's talking about
Mhm.
trauma and depression, and they were like, my God, there's
Mhm.
so much more to experience. So I think, falling in love with plants, and some people are really good gardeners, other people are really good with
Mhm.
horses or animals and those kind of things. That's fine. But we've all got the
Mhm.
opportunity to find that love for ourselves, to experience the love for
Mhm.
ourselves through a plant. Now, you said something very interesting when I questioned you about this before. So
Mhm.
we'll repeat that again, because we think that plants only communicate because they've got their roots in the earth. What
Yeah,
you,
no. Yep.
I can't remember what I call you, the lady from Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah, Professor Sprout.
Yeah, Professor Sprout. There we go. So
Yes.
when a plant is in a pot,
Mhm.
because I just kind of thought,
Mhm.
well, I can talk to my plants and I can send them
Mhm.
love and everything, but are they still being
Mhm.
this conduit for sort of universal source energy
Absolutely.
into our lives? Now you
Mhm.
put me straight and kind of said, "Well, it really depends how much love you're giving that plant
Yeah.
as to how they are being that
Mhm.
from source, that complete love vessel as well. And a plant
Mhm.
that's, not watered, not talked to, not cared for, after a while in
Mhm.
the pot is like, I don't know. I mean, I've had flowers that or plants that have lasted for like 10 years. And then
Mhm.
when the relationship died, so when the person who gave it to me and I split up,
Mhm.
the plant just didn't come back that year. I'm like,
Mhm.
because they're so connected with the whole subject. But going back to the
Mhm.
in a pot is just
Yeah.
as connected to source, the universe, God, whatever you want
Mhm.
to call it, as a plant that
Mhm.
is in the earth, if you're loving it.
It is. And a lot of the plants, our house plants will come into our lives because they actually help ameliorate, they absorb negative energy and other things. And so there's some plants that are very good at absorbing toxins and stuff, but it's also the energetic quality. And some plants will come into our lives specifically to absorb as much as possible, and then they die and they take that with them. I always feel very guilty about that because no, 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 I should be able to do this. But they remind me that this is a symbiotic relationship. You nurture, you give them life, you give them love, and then, they help heal you. So plants are like incredible healers. And yeah, the more you love on your plants, the more lush they can grow and the more they will thrive. And there are certain plants that you will resonate with. This is why you see so many people grow like the people who like love the succulent plants and the cactus and the aloe and do really well with those. And then there are people like me who I am the pothos queen. Um, Pothos and monstera and philodendron. I have those all over my house because the vining ones, and well, my I don't know, my Celtic astrology thing is the vine. So uh, maybe that's why. I don't know.
Is that not
Vining things seem to do
divine,
really
not
well.
just vine, divine?
Divine. Yeah, there you go. Divine. Like that. But it just and I talk to them, I sing to them, and I in the winter they are I well they keep me sane in the winter because everything goes so quiet outside because where I live most of the trees lose their leaves and a lot of the trees will just they go dormant in the winter, but their energy also kind of goes dormant and they get very, very quiet. An exception to that are pine trees or the evergreens. I shouldn't just say pine trees, but it's all the evergreens. But the evergreens will get kind of drowsy and they don't, some of them can get cranky in the winter. So now they don't always like to be woken up and spoken to.
I wonder if that's
Sycamores, yeah.
why I
Mm,
chose to live here. And I love the evergreens. I mean, I love flowers as well,
mhm,
but I love evergreens and
mhm,
I find them great
mhm,
company. And I've always had Fatsia
mhm,
japonica and I've always had a lot of, I don't know, evergreen
mhm,
plants around me. And I'm just thinking, I
mhm,
wonder if that's why, because I just find
mhm.
them such great company, and why I decided to live here
Yeah,
because they will,
there you
we
go.
don't get frost and snow and things. So they're always kind of
Mhm.
they're going through their cycles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there is an affinity there, and
Yeah, because
like
when I
cedar
made my list of
trees.
where I wanted to
Yeah.
live, it was like
Hmm.
I have to have a garden. I want to be an outside life. I want to be outside. So
Hmm.
that was one of the things that, and I could see a more tropical garden. So we've got hibiscus outside, and a lot of plants that in the
Oh,
UK we would
lovely.
have inside
Hmm.
only. They
Hmm.
flourish outside. I'm like, wow, I love this.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So like I have a cedar tree, and the funny story about the cedar tree is so my nana, my indigenous nana, we always had cedar trees on our properties, because cedars are sacred to her people. And so growing up, no, it didn't matter where we were, there were always some cedar trees. Well, this house that I lived in did not have a cedar tree. And I remember thinking at one point, yeah, I probably should get a cedar tree at some point because they're protective and they're wisdom keepers for us. And so one year, all of a sudden, there's a cedar tree growing next to my garage. It's like, oh, there's a cedar tree. Well, he's growing strong and he's just beautiful. And cedar trees actually are pretty cheerful even in the middle of winter. So, which is lovely. And the other tree that really surprises me that has a great sense of humor and is very chatty all year long, even when it has no leaves in the winter, are sycamore trees. They're right up there with the sense of humor, like the black locust trees. I love sycamore trees.
So then would you make
And
an essence out of that then to keep good humor? So, there's a question that goes back to you making your flower essences.
Yeah, because when I do my flower essences, what I come up with, the message that comes from the flowers when I do it is not necessarily what other people have gotten when they do
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
they do the same essence. So yes, for me, a sycamore is a lot of it is about maintaining the humor, maintaining uh seeing what is it, the positive in life, even no, it's not that's not necessarily the positive in life. Uh
I'm getting the playfulness or the kind of,
There is, I'm just trying to see because I know I have, as it came to me. So sycamore is one of the ones that I'm actually trying to find blooming because it keeps calling to me to do it. Um, so it's also about taking the mask off. You know, yeah, walking your walk.
being more authentic
Um,
and just being you and not worrying, giving a hoot what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, basically because that mask that we all wear, the facade, it doesn't protect us the way we think it does. It
Oh,
just kind of holds us back. So it's letting your inner light shine and letting yourself be you. Um, yeah, so it helps you
I
it
mean, I
helps
know
you
that
do
Dr.
that.
Bach flower remedy, he's got larch for confidence and things like that. But what you're doing then is
Yeah.
your frequencies in those ones are slightly different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so sycamore is on my list of ones I still have to do. There's a couple others. I had a staghorn sumac um, show up next to my garage, and it hasn't bloomed yet, but I'm hoping this year it will bloom because sumac is another one that has been calling to me for years. That's a tree that has resonated with me since I was a child. I love sumac, and this isn't the poison sumac, which is a vine, but this is this is they're just I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's the staghorn sumac. They use the cones when the flowers form the cones. They are so my indigenous family would make tea out of them. They're very high in vitamin C, so they're very healthy from an herbal standpoint. They're also used in a lot of Middle Eastern cooking, I believe, as a spice. They grind it up and use sumac, and it's very citrusy tasting because of all the vitamin C. So, but this tree, there's just something about it that I have absolutely loved um, since I was just a small child. And
Yeah,
that one I haven't
there's
sat
an
down to do
affinity there, isn't there?
oh, there is. And they can get kind of big and floppy looking. But so I'm really hoping that this one doesn't do too bad. I've got to actually, I'm starting to put it onto a trellis because I don't want it to overhang my neighbor's car in his driveway because of where mine's growing. But so yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I love gardening, I love plants, how can I have my first
Mhm.
conversation with a plant? And how do I know that I'm reaching the plant? How do I know?
Trust. So if you sit with a plant or a tree or a flower and you begin to feel emotions with that, that's part of it. That's the energy speaking to you. If you might get images in your head, you might actually hear words, song lyrics. Uh, it's following your intuition and understanding that what you are feeling when you are with that growing plant, what you're feeling is real. And ask it a question. So seriously, if someone is really wanting to actually open up the plant communication, as you're sitting with the plant, ask it something. And then just patiently settle yourself and allow yourself to feel or hear or see what comes to you. And then that opens up the line of communication. And the
The
more
person
you
doesn't need to
speak with it,
be intuitive already. This could
gosh,
just
no,
be another way of
no.
opening up intuition for somebody who's never even done it before.
Absolutely. And I can guarantee you that the people who go out there and do landscaping and do gardening, like the people who know how to bring a garden to life, truly to life,
Green
probably already do
fingers.
this intrinsically. Yes, they do this. They do this intrinsically.
Yeah,
And they do it without knowing it. And so
yeah,
there's a lot of people who will do that communication, but they don't realize they're doing that
yeah.
communication. Like,
So I think you're
so they're
building an
okay.
awareness then, what you're asking people to do,
Yes.
like who are already working with plants, it would be
Hmm.
right, okay, well let's just build an awareness then and build up the trust that I'm already
Hmm.
listening. Oh, this one needs water, this one needs a little bit less water. You know, like when
Hmm.
you walk past
Hmm.
the plant in your house, you go, oh God, I'm so thirsty. And you realize,
Yes.
oh, actually,
Yes.
it's the plant that's thirsty, not me.
Yep.
But yes, what a treat it would be for a
Hmm.
landscape gardener or Chelsea Flower Show. I'm thinking of the flower
Hmm.
show I used to love to go to in the UK.
Mm.
If they had this affinity with plants, because it brings tears to my eyes when I go to a garden centre and I see plants that aren't taken care for. I'm just like, I want to get
Oh
them
yeah.
all. You know, when you go to the
Mhm.
supermarket, there's rows and rows and rows of plants that have been just beautifully grown geraniums, and all of a sudden, of course, a week later, nobody's looked after them.
Yeah.
And they've got no light. I'm like, oh, part of me
They feel
dies.
so sad. Yep.
I always go and buy the plants that need a little bit of resuscitation.
Well, do you know how people joke about, yeah, I was walking by and I swear I heard it call to me, and then I came home with 10 plants.
Yeah,
Yes, those plants called to you and they said, save me. And you did. You heard them. It may be on a soul level,
yeah.
but you heard them.
Yeah,
So,
some reason,
it's
and it's not necessarily with any intuition. It's not that you go, da-da-da, you know, it gets written out in your particular language.
yeah.
It's a feeling that just goes through your whole body, and you just
Hmm.
go, "That's not right."
I have to fix this. I need to take this poor baby needs my TLC. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's where it all starts.
yeah,
So all these people who have these jungles in their houses and they say, "Oh, I don't know how to talk to plants." Obviously, you do
yeah, exactly. But
because
it's a
they're
level of
thriving and
awareness,
they're
it's a level of listening, it's a level of feel. So this is
yes.
the same as I would say with someone who's beginning to have that conversation with their soul or the spirit of their business. It's
Hmm.
like, what's coming back
Hmm.
to you when we say this? So I'm feeling into the body and I'm kind of saying, what did
Hmm.
you just feel then? Like, oh, I didn't. Okay, well, just do it again. Oh, yeah, actually, I can feel my sort of my tummy clenching. I said, okay, well, this is the beginning of understanding how your body is the barometer for everything that's around you, whether it's your
Hmm.
pet or whether it's the plants or whether it's something else. But
Hmm.
we're bombarded with so many feelings, the news and music and entertainment and other people and their thoughts and everything else. Just like
Hmm.
learning to get quiet on that level is an absolute gift.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yes. And it's the gift that keeps giving because the more you cultivate
So here's a question
this
then.
kind of
I mean, I
relationship.
am an
Yeah.
avid
Uh-huh.
propagator because I can't let any of those
Hmm.
little babies
Yeah.
go
Same. Hmm.
uncared for. And I'm like, what can I do with these babies? You know, and I'm just like babies and more babies and more babies. And I remember speaking to my dad and I speak to my brother about this as well because we've got the green finger in our family.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, look, it's just beginning to sprout the seed that you've planted, the chili seed or something. But the feeling inside your body is like, hello there, baby.
Yeah.
Hello. And it's such a wonderful feeling that, you're bringing something up. And I know when you grow tomato seeds or something, you have to thin them out. And I'm like,
Hmm.
once I don't want to throw it away. I don't want to kill it. So it's a real job
Yeah.
for me, like when something has
Yeah.
sprouted, to then thin them out.
Yep. It's like thinning carrots for me. I hate to thin the carrots because I hate to lose yeah,
When you
yeah.
what,
I feel
sorry?
awful about it, but when I plant carrots,
Yeah.
so yeah, you have to thin the carrots.
Yes,
Yes, I hate doing that because so my carrots usually grow very crowded because I hate thinning them. Um,
exactly.
mm,
Exactly. Like, oh,
mhm.
you all sprouted. Well
Yeah,
done. Now I'm going to thin you out, but I'm going to have to plant you somewhere else.
yeah, yep. It's so hard. So yeah, I tend to plant my carrot seeds a little further apart from each other just so I have less thinning to do. But yeah, so but it's like all my pothos and my philodendron that I have when I sit there and I have I've actually I have colorful jars hanging from several of my windows in my kitchen and the upstairs bath and my bedroom. And I have that's where I propagate is all in all these colorful jars hanging in my windows. And so that I end up with a lot of plants simply because they like, I want to hang in a jar. I want to be in that colorful space. And yeah.
And I remember you telling me the story of being Mrs. Sprout, and you were sort of
Oh
taking
yeah.
you want that pot. All right, yeah, you want to go in that
Oh
pot.
yes.
When they were
They
actually
choose their pots. Hmm.
they were telling you what you wanted. Now, just to finish off the last conversation here,
Yes.
I want you to tell us a little bit about grandfather tree, but also how you are navigating the storms that come your way.
So grandfather tree, as I said before, he's older than my house, and so he whenever things get really chaotic or really tough for me to navigate, I will go to grandfather tree and I will talk to him. And honestly, if you've never felt a tree hug you before, trees will hug you. And again, it's not like a physical hugging, although now after experiencing the branch thing, I think that could be a real thing too. um, it's this energetic thing. 'Cause as I was sitting there and giving Reiki to Grandfather Tree, when that whoosh of energy came up, I felt myself just being drawn in, and like I had these arms holding me just so tight, and it was so supportive and comforting in a time when I really, really needed that. So Grandfather Tree is the tree, one of the trees that I go to when I just can't, I just can't anymore, you know,
When
which is
life
like,
is just
and
too much
yeah, yeah. And it doesn't matter if I'm actually touching him or if I'm sitting here at my desk.
and
I can
thinking.
sit and breathe and I can tap into that energy, and he and I can have a conversation, or we can just, do that energy exchange, and just he'll always be there. So distance is not an issue.
So
So
something
anybody.
that I experienced in hugging a tree was
Mhm,
I'd done a couple of days of a vision quest, and there's a big oak
mhm,
tree nearby, and I went, okay, I'm just going to go and
mhm,
be with the tree. And
mhm,
like you get embarrassed if other people are walking past, but I was just being with the
mhm,
tree, and all of a sudden my breathing changed, and I was breathing at the slow rhythm of the tree, and I could feel
mhm.
everything going up to the heavens and then everything coming back down to it. I was like,
Yes.
oh, that's interesting. And then I
Mhm.
got soaked into the tree. So like I wasn't
Yes.
separate
Okay.
anymore. I was like I didn't exist. I was just I was
Mhm,
in the whole conduit of the energy. And I think that's why the dragons say that they are our closest living energy cousins,
mhm,
because we are walking conduits, like we are the lighthouse,
mhm,
and then so are they, so that we can
mhm.
be, is it okay that I give you a hug? Not just
Yeah.
like indiscriminately, like I'm going to give you a hug,
Yeah.
but like that you can actually sort of you blend and you merge. And I
Mhm.
think that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because and you said about it, it's that we're walking conduits, so the trees kind of are too. So they don't walk at the same pace we do, and they don't actually walk. So it's more like there'll be a grove of trees, and over the years you can see how the grove of trees kind of moves over a little bit. So there's and as I said, sycamore trees. So sycamore, and they love to talk about this, but I had one job where I would drive and I kept noticing all these sycamore trees. And I was like, I don't remember you guys ever being there. And it had been years since I'd been up this way. And then I had a job that took me through there. And so as I'm driving and talking to the sycamores, it's like, okay, why are you guys suddenly, all of a sudden, I'm seeing all of these sycamore trees? Is this just me noticing sycamores more, or is this, what is this? And the response I got was, no, we're heading in this direction so that we will be where we are needed when we are needed there.
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, kind of cryptic, but at the same time, not, because sycamore trees are purifiers. So one of the reasons why you find them by waterways is because they will help purify the water in that waterway.
But they're also in, oh, I
So
just got them, but they're also in danger of somebody saying, we don't want you here. Ka-ching!
yeah, for some reason people don't like the sycamores, and it might be because their bark looks kind of weird. It's one of the reasons I love them. But certain trees will migrate
Migrate.
to
Yeah.
where they are needed. And it's kind of mind-boggling to think that trees will migrate. But yeah, so
And I
there are
don't think
trees that
there's anything between growing a pea or growing a strawberry or growing a tomato plant or growing anything.
Mhm.
I think anything is communicable with. It doesn't have to be a 150-year-old
Absolutely.
tree who's going to
Oh, no, 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 no,
speak.
no. Anything
It's like
you
anything.
and if you buy it from the plant nursery and you take it home and you plant it, talk to it, sing to it as you're planting it, and cultivate a relationship with that plant, and you will see that they will thrive so much more
I'm
and
being
they will
shown,
provide so
I'm
much
being
more.
shown right now
Mhm,
because I know
mhm.
that alcoholics are often told you can't have a relationship with a human if you can't keep this plant alive.
Oh, yeah,
So I think,
yeah.
there is a relationship that we build, okay, with ourselves, with our soul, with our plants, with our kids, with our dogs, with our everything. The point is that we're building a
Mhm.
relationship.
Yes, it is. It's all about, yeah. And I will tell you, there are times in my life when trees and plants have been safer
Yeah,
than human companionship.
yeah.
So, yeah. And I've never felt in danger from trees. You
Even if
know,
they're going to fall on you,
seriously.
which brings me back to the story of the storm, so of how you,
Oh, yes, the storm. So we get some really strong winds in through here sometimes, and grandfather tree being as old as he is, and black locusts will drop branches, especially the older they get, and some of the branches are pretty big that they drop. And I remember going out with when this wind is like whipping and you can see the trees literally going, and I'm in town, I'm not out on the suburbs or the countryside. So I'm out in my backyard and I'm just standing there and I'm watching the wind whip these trees, and I'm like, okay, guys, I'm just going to do a check-in. What do you need me to do? Do I need to worry about anything? Do I need to cover stuff? Do I need to, worry about you falling down and breaking anything? And the trees are like, nope, we're just dancing. We're going to be fine. We're not going to break. No branches are going to fall. And grandfather has promised me that if for some reason something does come through and knock him down, he's going down in in that yard over there, completely free and clear, where he's not going to hit either of the houses. He's going to be perfectly fine. And then Charlotte and Herman have said the same. Those are my other two black locusts, Charlotte and Herman. Um, and they have said the same thing, that if something ever happens, they will fall where they will do little to no damage and they won't hit the houses. So, but yeah, they love to dance in the wind, and they they have told me that it's well, they tell me every time I've gone out to speak to them during a storm like this, they do let me know, whether or not I need to worry, and I've never had to worry at this point. But I love that they communicate that with me, and yeah, they're very protective, and that's part of it is that they're there to protect
but
and
they
not
have
to
choice. They have the
harm.
choice of which way they fall. They
Oh,
have
they
the
do.
choice of all sorts
They
of.
do.
So
Yep.
they are conscious. So
Mhm.
therefore they are able to
Mhm.
help out. So Elizabeth, just
Mhm.
ending then.
Mhm.
where can people find you?
Okay, so I have Lizbeth's Botanicals is my business, and you can find me on Facebook under Lizbeth's Botanicals. You can find me on Instagram. I'm also on Pinterest and LinkedIn. I'm on there as Elizabeth P. Russell, but Lizbeth's Botanicals is in my logo and stuff. My website is lindentreeintuitive.com because I have a linden
We'll
tree
put
out
all
front.
the links underneath the video and everything so that
Yeah,
you have links.
yeah,
And
yeah.
is there anything that you can give as a giveaway that you might be happy to share either right now vocally, or if there's anything that somebody can pick up and read a little bit more about what you do?
Um, yeah. So I do have a couple of um things. Do I have them here? I'm just trying to find them on my.
Oh, don't worry. But if you
They're
have
not in there,
something
but
that
I
you're
do.
able to offer,
Yeah, so I have actually, I do have a really cute little PDF on a daily practice that you can do to connect with the earth energies and plant energies and everything like that. So I
super.
have that to give away. So
Well, that would
yeah, if
be
anyone's
wonderful.
interested in that, just, contact me and I'd be happy to send that along to you.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. Awesome, awesome, awesome talking
Mhm.
to you. I could talk about plants
Yeah.
because I'm a real plant lover.
Yeah, I can do this
So,
forever. So I can just do this
okay.
forever. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much for having me on. Appreciate it.
My absolute
Thanks.
pleasure. Right, I'm going to stop the recording.